When people hear the phrase shadow IT, they often imagine employees doing something sneaky, like secretly installing random software in defiance of rules. For brand new learners, that framing makes the problem sound like a simple discipline issue, where governance just needs to tighten control and punish bad behavior. In real organizations, shadow IT is more often a symptom than a cause, and it grows when official services are slow, confusing, expensive, or misaligned with what teams need to accomplish. Shadow IT can include unofficial tools, unsanctioned data sharing, personal accounts used for work, unofficial automation, and side systems built to get work done when the official path feels impossible. The risk is not only that shadow IT exists, but that it creates unmanaged exposures, such as unclear ownership, inconsistent controls, hidden data flows, and dependencies that the enterprise cannot see during incidents. Handling shadow IT effectively, therefore, requires a balanced approach that uses governance to set boundaries, incentives to shape behavior, and service improvements to remove the reasons people create workarounds in the first place. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Shadow IT should be understood as an outcome of friction between what the enterprise expects and what people need to do to meet their goals. If a team needs to collaborate with an external partner quickly, but the official process for creating a secure workspace takes weeks, people will look for faster alternatives. If business users need reporting and analytics, but the official data access process is confusing, they may copy data into spreadsheets and personal cloud storage to get answers. If a team needs a workflow tool, but the approved option is difficult to use or does not match their needs, they may adopt a third-party tool on their own. In each case, the intent is often productivity, not sabotage. Governance that treats every shadow IT instance as misconduct can drive the behavior underground, making visibility worse and increasing risk. A mature governance approach begins by acknowledging the underlying drivers, because fixing drivers is often more effective than increasing rules. This is where governance becomes practical. It focuses on enabling safe work rather than on blocking work. The risks created by shadow IT are usually about invisibility and inconsistency. When the enterprise does not know a tool exists, it cannot manage access properly, cannot enforce data handling standards, cannot monitor for unusual behavior, and cannot plan for continuity if the tool fails. When the enterprise does not know where sensitive data flows, it cannot meet compliance obligations reliably and cannot respond quickly during incidents. Shadow IT also creates ownership gaps because the person who set up the tool may leave the organization, and then nobody is responsible for updates, access reviews, or incident handling. Even when the tool itself is not inherently insecure, unmanaged use creates exposure because controls are missing or inconsistent. This is why the goal is not to eliminate all unofficial tools through force, but to reduce unmanaged exposure by bringing important tools into visibility and governance. Shadow IT management is therefore an exercise in risk optimization, preserving the productivity benefits that drove adoption while reducing the risks created by lack of oversight. Governance provides the boundaries and decision rights that shape how the enterprise responds to shadow IT without creating chaos. The first governance step is to make it safe for people to surface shadow IT, because visibility is the foundation of control. If employees fear punishment, they will hide unofficial tools, and the enterprise will remain blind. A practical governance approach communicates that the enterprise wants to know what tools exist so it can assess and manage them, and it distinguishes between cooperative disclosure and reckless behavior that knowingly violates critical rules. Governance should also define which categories of tools are high impact and require stricter oversight, such as tools that store sensitive data, handle customer information, or integrate with critical services. This creates a proportional approach where not every small utility triggers the same heavy process, but high-risk tools receive careful attention. Clear decision rights matter as well, because teams need to know who can approve a tool, who can accept residual risk, and what criteria are used for approval. When governance is clear and fair, shadow IT becomes a manageable flow of information rather than an endless game of hide and seek. Incentives shape behavior because people respond to what is rewarded, what is punished, and what is made easy. If the enterprise rewards speed above all else, teams will adopt whatever tools help them deliver quickly, even if those tools create exposure. If the enterprise punishes any deviation without providing workable alternatives, teams will still find workarounds, but will hide them, increasing risk. Effective shadow IT handling aligns incentives by making the safe path the easiest path and by recognizing teams that bring tools into governance early. Incentives can include fast approval pathways for low-risk tools, self-service options for common collaboration needs, and clear guidance that reduces decision uncertainty for teams. Incentives also include leadership behavior, such as treating early risk reporting as responsibility rather than failure. When leaders respond constructively, teams learn that being transparent is valued, and that transparency is one of the strongest controls against unmanaged exposure. Incentives do not need to be financial. Often the most powerful incentive is reduced friction and faster support. Service improvements are usually the most sustainable way to reduce shadow IT because they address the root cause, which is that people adopt unofficial tools when official services do not meet needs. Service improvement begins with listening to users and measuring where friction occurs, such as long wait times, unclear processes, poor usability, or gaps in functionality. It also includes making official services more reliable and responsive, because unreliable services drive people to find alternatives. A mature governance program treats the IT organization as a service provider with customers inside the enterprise, and it uses performance management to improve those services based on results. For example, if teams are using personal file sharing accounts because the approved collaboration service is difficult to provision, the enterprise can improve provisioning speed and clarity, reducing the motivation for workarounds. If teams are building shadow reporting systems because official data services are too slow to respond, the enterprise can improve data access workflows and offer standardized analytics services. When official services improve, shadow IT decreases naturally because the need for it declines. A practical approach to handling shadow IT is to create a pathway that converts unknown tools into known and governed tools without automatically shutting everything down. This begins with discovery and inventory, which can be supported by surveys, procurement data, network usage patterns, and interviews with teams, but the most effective discovery often comes from building trust so people disclose tools voluntarily. Once tools are visible, the enterprise can triage them by risk and criticality, identifying which tools are low impact and which could affect sensitive data or critical operations. For higher-risk tools, the enterprise can perform a focused assessment that examines data sensitivity, access controls, third-party risk, and continuity considerations, then decide whether to approve, replace, or restrict usage. The key is to keep the process proportional and timely, because long delays push people back into hiding behavior. Governance should aim for decisions that are explainable and that include follow-up actions, such as migrating data to approved platforms, establishing ownership, or adding monitoring. This pathway turns shadow IT from an unmanaged threat into an input to improvement. Ownership is especially important because one of the biggest risks of shadow IT is that nobody is responsible for it when something goes wrong. When a tool becomes governed, the enterprise should assign a responsible owner, such as a service owner or business process owner, who is accountable for ensuring the tool remains within standards and that access and data handling are managed consistently. The owner does not need to be a technical expert, but they must have authority to influence how the tool is used and maintained. Governance should also clarify support expectations, because a common tension is whether IT must support every tool that teams adopt. A practical approach is to define support tiers, where approved enterprise tools have full support, while approved exceptions may have limited support and clear responsibilities. This keeps governance honest because it avoids promising support that the enterprise cannot provide. It also nudges teams towards standardized solutions by making the benefits of using supported services visible. Handling shadow IT also involves data governance, because data is often the most sensitive part of the problem. Shadow tools often create uncontrolled copies of data, unclear retention, and unclear sharing, which can violate legal and regulatory obligations. A governance approach focuses on understanding what data is involved, where it flows, who can access it, and how it is protected. Instead of framing this as a policing activity, mature governance frames it as protecting the enterprise and protecting the teams, because unmanaged data exposure can lead to serious consequences. Practical steps include establishing clear data classification expectations, offering safe data sharing services that are easy to use, and providing guidance on what data can and cannot be placed in certain tool categories. The more the enterprise makes safe data handling straightforward, the less likely teams are to take shortcuts. When data handling is improved, shadow IT becomes less risky even when some decentralized tools remain. Third-party risk is another major aspect because many shadow tools are cloud services adopted without formal review. Even if the tool is popular and reputable, the enterprise must understand contractual terms, data location, incident handling obligations, and the vendor's ability to support business continuity. Governance should have a lightweight but meaningful approach to third-party evaluation, especially for tools that handle sensitive information. The goal is not to demand exhaustive questionnaires for every minor tool, but to ensure that high-impact tools meet minimum expectations and that the enterprise understands the residual risk it is accepting. This is where proportionality is essential because heavy processes can push teams into hiding, while no process leaves the enterprise blind. A well-designed program uses risk-based triage, prioritizing scrutiny where the impact could be high. Over time, this approach also improves procurement and vendor management because the enterprise learns which tool categories create the most exposure and can standardize offerings accordingly. Communication is critical because people often adopt shadow IT simply because they do not know what the approved options are or how to get them quickly. A governance approach communicates approved services clearly, explains the reasons behind key restrictions without using scare tactics, and provides simple guidance for common needs like collaboration, data sharing, and workflow automation. Communication should also include what to do if the approved options do not meet needs, such as how to request improvements or how to propose a new tool for review. If teams feel they have no voice, they will create their own solutions. If teams feel the enterprise listens and responds, they are more likely to engage in governance pathways. Communication also sets expectations about consequences, but the emphasis should be on enabling safe work and managing exposure, not on creating fear. When communication is consistent and respectful, it supports a culture where people bring tools into the light rather than hiding them. A simple example can show how governance, incentives, and service improvements work together. Imagine a sales team that starts using an unofficial document sharing platform to collaborate with partners because the approved platform is difficult to provision externally. Governance responds by asking what the team needs, what data is being shared, and what the risks are, and it avoids immediate punishment so disclosure remains safe. The enterprise then evaluates the tool's risk and decides whether it can be approved with conditions or whether data must be migrated to an approved service. At the same time, leadership improves the approved collaboration service by simplifying external access provisioning and clarifying the process so teams can use it quickly. Incentives are aligned by making the approved path faster and by recognizing the team for bringing the issue forward. Over time, the sales team naturally shifts away from the unofficial tool because the official service now meets their needs, and the enterprise reduces exposure because data flows are controlled and monitored. This is a practical pattern that turns shadow IT into a driver of service improvement rather than a persistent, unmanaged risk. As we conclude, handling shadow IT effectively requires treating it as a governance challenge and a service quality challenge, not merely a discipline problem. Governance establishes clear boundaries, decision rights, and proportional review pathways that bring unofficial tools into visibility and control without driving them deeper underground. Incentives shape behavior by making the safe path easy, by rewarding transparency, and by aligning leadership signals with risk appetite and tolerance. Service improvements address root causes by reducing friction in official services, improving responsiveness, and meeting real business needs so workarounds become less attractive. When these elements work together, the enterprise reduces unmanaged exposure while preserving productivity and innovation where appropriate. If you remember one guiding idea, Let it be that shadow IT thrives where official services fail to meet needs. And the most credible governance response is to manage risk with transparency and proportional controls while improving services so the enterprise no longer needs to operate in the shadows.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.